bit about how your imposter syndrome affected you, those around you, and just in general where you are now after it, or if you're still in it?
Sure. So I will say to anyone experiencing burnout, yes, you can.
Yeah.
The imposter syndrome is just like this horrible feeling of self-doubt. I experienced it when I realized I probably needed to get out of that workplace situation, and I started looking for jobs. And I'd look at jobs that on a normal day I knew I was totally qualified for, but I would talk myself out of it and say, I can't handle that. That's too much responsibility. So I was just really not giving myself the credit for how smart and capable I was because I was feeling that way in the moment. In terms of advice to listeners, my biggest advice is talk to somebody. Don't suffer silently. Talking really helped me. I did a lot of talking with my sister who, knew me really, really well. And she would say, Pam, you are so more than qualified for this job, and just to have that constant boost and reassurance from people that you're comfortable with and that you trust, whether that's a counselor or a therapist or just a really good friend or a family member, it's important to have that community of support and to not be hesitant to tap into it when you need it.
That's great.
And I became a mental health advocate by complete happenstance. I shared my story once with a couple of coworkers. It had an unexpected impact and got invited to speak on a mental health storytelling panel. And the next thing you know, I'm like, oh my goodness, I can help people. I want to help people. And in a time of COVID, I think everybody was struggling to feel like you could help somehow. And so that just kind of became baked into my leadership style, just prioritizing folks' health and well-being and leading by example.
What would you say to our listeners saying that you will just take a bath, or we'll need to meditate or learn to do yoga, and that'll self-care myself out of burnout? What would you say to someone who's saying that?
I tried it and it didn't work. That would be the quick summary. That's one of the things that I'm so thankful that you have this podcast, because people can talk about it and hear about it from like real people,
right?
Celebrities and mental health experts are great, but the real people, it's so important. Once you get into a mental health state, it's almost impossible to fix. And I recently attended a webinar by Lyra Health, and they had this report called Combating Work Fatigue in an Always On World. And they actually defined burnout as an organizational problem, not an employee problem, which was a huge aha for me. But it basically says you don't have control to fix this on your own. And so I would say, talk to people. If you can fix it organizationally, great. But if you can't, don't be ashamed to move on. That might be the best thing for your mental health.
Absolutely. You touched on a little bit what you're telling your staff. For those leaders and female entrepreneurs and listeners right now about who are trying to champion workplace wellness and kind of fighting the good fight against, EAP, and how can you bridge that support for your coworkers and then your colleagues as well? What are some tips and tricks that you are doing right now with your team, inside your team? I know you mentioned focusing on employee wellness and mental wellness and having that chant to them, right? Your wellness is the most important thing to me. But what are some other things like you would do or are doing?
Sure. My biggest thing is just leading with empathy. That is sort of like my motto for myself. It's how I'm branding myself. It's how I've always led, but it is now something that I am actively stating and living. Good. And the crazy thing is, Hannah, it's actually really simple. People, it is so simple.
Fair.
Say thank you.
Yeah.
Recognize people privately and publicly when they have gone the extra mile, when they have been working hard, when they put in extra hours, when they helped you out of a bind. Just creating an environment of psychological safety.
So I think anything that we can do to teach the next generation or kids, just even starting at a young age, like, what are you feeling right now? Stop and assess, like, what are you feeling right now? Because if you don't know what you're feeling, you don't know how to respond. You're just automatically responding something that you don't even know, or you don't even know if that's what you want. And I think, I don't know if you experience this as well, but a lot of women that I speak to are in their careers. And if you ask them, like, in their 30s or 40s, do you even want to be in this career? Do you even like your job? Well, I haven't really thought about it. Because I was just moving and walking forward every day and living not in your body. So
yeah, you're always on like what must get done. Yeah, it's kind of like you're just swimming right in a current, and every now and then you have to force yourself to like pop your head up and be like, where am I in relation to where I started, and how much closer am I to where I want to go? Do I still want to go there?
Yeah, and do I need a lifeguard or not?
Or a cocktail?